And I want to speak to you on 3 tools for fathers. I'm really excited to talk to you today about what the Bible says concerning 3 tools for fathers, because for most men, we really don't understand the power that God has given to us as men and as fathers. And as I talk today, you know me, I think this is a well-known thing about me, is whether you're a single man or a married man or a divorced man, or you had children and they've died or passed away, or you're estranged from them. And if you're a woman today, these principles all transfer to every one of us, okay? But because of Father's Day, I will be focusing and targeting on fathers. Men, there's this thing called father power. And I wholeheartedly resonate with the manhood definition that we learned in our men's ministry. ICOM stands for In the Company of Men, as from Dr. Robert Lewis in the men's fraternity. And it can be easily remembered by this acronym, RAIL, R-A-L-E. I call it the manhood rail. Here's what it stands for. A real man learns to reject passivity. And I think you'll agree with me that that's kind of a plight to the male, especially if you take the SURF VIP, your spiritual life, emotional, relational, financial, vocational, intellectual, and your physical life. There's some of us here, men, you probably will reject passivity in one of those areas, maybe 2 of those areas. Usually a man might reject passivity in the physical area, maybe in the vocational area. We oftentimes remain very passive when it comes to spiritual, emotional, relational things. So a real man rejects passivity. Secondly, accepts responsibility. Accepts responsibility. And I could take a whole time to unpack Genesis chapter 3 when God came to Adam and said, what happened? What did he do? The woman you gave me. And he blame shifts immediately. And we've been blaming ever since. L, leads courageously. Leads courageously. You don't have to be necessarily terribly bright or an extrovert. You just have to be willing to lead. And most leadership involves courage because it involves self-sacrifice. And E, expect God's great reward. We reject passivity, we accept responsibility, we lead courageously, and we expect God's great reward. It takes this understanding of manhood to put the 3 tools into use that I want to talk to you about today. Now, father power can be seen throughout the scripture. Would you read with me Genesis chapter 5, verse 3? Let's read that together. Let's begin. When Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son who was just like him in his very image. He named... Is there another... okay, there it is in white. Wow, this is different. He named his son Seth. This verse tells us that Adam demonstrated the effects and the impact of father power when he produced a son named Seth. And the scripture says he bore his likeness and image. Now notice this. The word likeness and image refers far more than to just the physical resemblance. That likeness and image had to do with his personality traits. It has to do with his behavior patterns. And it has to do with his character qualities. In other words, father power has been transferred, the very essence of who Adam is, into his child. And it's been the same thing in every generational transfer since. The Bible says that father power strikes deeper than just one generation. It not only injects you, men, into your children, it projects you down through your genetic lines as far as down as what's called the 4th generation. I like to call this the 4G span. And we get this 4G span from several scriptures, but 2 specifically that have this as just a normal pattern, but it also has a disturbing feature about manpower, father power. The energy of Father power picks up a man's heart, whether it's good or evil. And it hurtles it down through his seed. So Father power can be negative or it can be positive. Now I like this because you and I get to choose whether it's going to be a negative or whether it's going to be positive. The Bible specifically describes each. Look at the first one. Here's the negative side of it. Exodus 34, 6 and 7. First it says this. Moses says to God, would you show me your ways? So God passes in front of him, and it says this. The Lord passed in front of Moses, calling out Yahweh, the Lord. And then he describes himself, the God of compassion and mercy. I'm slow to anger, and I'm filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. I lavish unfailing love to 1,000 generations. I forgive iniquity, rebellion, and sin. There's the positive side of God. Now here's his justice side and his discipline side. But I do not excuse the guilt. I lay the sins of the parents upon their children and grandchildren. The entire family is affected. Even children, here's the 4G span, to the third and fourth generation. What this passage is telling us is that Heavenly Father is a compassionate, he's a merciful, he's a slow to anger God, and he's filled with unfailing love and faithfulness, and that he lavishes his unfailing love to 1,000 generations. How's that for Father power? That's powerful. It says he forgives our iniquity and our rebellion and our sin. Yet children will suffer from their parents' generational sin. You can see this very clearly in alcoholic families, drug-addicted families, sexually abusing families. We also see this in all different types of generational sins that are passed down. From sexual immorality, you can see adultery, prostitution, incest, pedophilia. You'll see that it can have a generational, it can track in families. Have you noticed that? 95% of men who are in prison for sexual abuse, it's because they were sexually abused themselves. And you can trace it right down the generational line. You can see it in anger. You can see it in hostility, rage, pride, arrogance, lying, stealing, passivity, whatever your sin de jure is. You can see there's that negative father power. So that means, guys, we have a real responsibility. And the Lord can redeem our mistakes. Aren't you happy for that? I sure am. It's never too late to change. Change is always one thought away, one attitude away, one action away. So with whatever I say today, Satan would love to pour guilt and condemnation down. You just have to stand against it. Whenever I read fathering stuff, whenever I read parent stuff, my natural tendency is to go, oh man, I'm a failure. That's exactly what Satan wants. God says, I have you reading this stuff because I want you to see where the pain is. I want you to see where the weakness is so that you can step up into it and challenge it. Does this make sense? I vowed I wouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Dean Kirshner. He's been in our church for 18, 19 years. His life's gone up and down. He's on a real strong, positive walk with God right now. He says, hey, I'd like to take you hiking. Really? Okay. Well, I'm going to bring my daughter and see if her boyfriend wants to come and my son and his girlfriend. Oh, the more the merrier. What turned out, it wasn't really a hike. It was more like a wilderness survival. We ended up rappelling off of 4 cliffs, and I'll show it to you later on. The last one was 180 feet. Oh, yeah. Yeah, unbelievable. One of the young men was going before me. He looks at me and says, Scott, I'm terrified. And I looked at him and I said, I am too. I'm real terrified. And my kids had a ball. On the second one, it was wet and mossy. And I'll have to show it to you. I fell. I'm black and blue. I've got cuts all over my body. Here's the point. what I like about it is when Dean would say, now we're at the point of no return, which means if you decide to do this, you cannot go back. Because we're not in civilization. There's nobody taking your ticket. There's nobody saying, would you walk to the right and get to the tram and we'll take you out. No. You go in, you come out under your own power if you still have it by the end of the time. And what was challenging to me, by the time we got to the 180-foot rappel, I was exhausted. I mean, I was shot. Halfway through, I just hung there. And it was great. Dean's going, you got to step out and you got to get your butt out there and you got to get your legs. And I just looked down and said, shut up! Afterwards, I had to repent. I mean, I'm sitting here going, this is all I can do to hang on. Thank God for the rope or I would have been done. And these guys are laughing their heads off. They're just loving it. Dad's strangling up there, And I'm sitting here going, dear Jesus, if I've ever needed you, I need you now. But you know what was cool about it? Is most of us, you have to be challenged to get out of your comfort zone. Any changes that we're going to make, you have to be willing to be challenged. And I thought about it. I thought, how stupid is this? I'm on a rope, and I'm starting to descend 180 feet. And it's just me and the rope. And I heard the Lord just say, this is exactly what the life of faith is all about. It's you out there against demonic principalities and powers, your own sin, your own selfishness, but you've got the rope. What you do with the rope is everything. So, men, I want to encourage us, no matter how much negative father power has been expressed through your life, and there's been more expressed through mine than I like to admit, we can always change. Get the rope on, start down the face of that mountain. God will take you, and he will hold you. Now look at the positive side. Psalm 78, 5 and 7, it says this. For he issued his laws to Jacob. He commanded our fathers to teach these laws, these biblical principles to their children, so the next generation might know them. Notice this one. Even the children not yet born. Can I just say this? This is what makes abortion so damnable. God's already knows their name. He's looking forward to the next generation that's not even born yet. We don't have a right to take them out. Nobody has that choice. And he says, guys, be prepared. Teach them to your children's children. Be prepared to teach them to Whitney and Benny's children. And then in turn, they will teach to their own children. So each generation should set its hope anew on God, not forgetting his glorious miracles and obeying his commands. It is God's desire, his purposes, his plans, and his love, his truth, and his character that they be passed on through us as men. And if you're here and you do not have children, if you're single, whether you know it or not, you do have children. You have children in this congregation. You have children that you will relate to. And if you aren't relating to children, I want to encourage you to relate to children. And start being that kind of manly, godly presence to these kids. Now, I thought it was funny. Benjamin and Whitney, I'm hoping to show you the clips. I was just thrashing around on the face of that thing. And you should have seen, I was smacking myself. And I looked backwards like this. And Whitney was laughing uncontrollably. And Benny, you could hear him in the video. They're just howling. It's funny to see Dad up there just, puh, 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 puh. And I thought, I love my daddy. Some of you don't like it when I talk this way. My dad was my best friend for the last 18 years. But let me tell you, if you laughed at one of Dad's weaknesses, you would pay for it. You did not laugh. If you thought you were going to laugh, you got yourself out of the room. Because if he saw the smirk, you were in trouble. And it brought such joy to my heart as I was flapping around up there and hurting myself that they weren't laughing at me. They weren't sitting there going, what a fool up there. It was out of love. They just saw their dad in a situation they've not seen him before. And I thought, I hope the cost isn't too expensive. But I'm glad they're having a good time. This is why Satan's attack upon the family and marriage, as defined by God in the Bible, is so intense and so hateful. We must stand up and be counted for. One of the best ways for us as men in our marriages and families to do this is to do what I want to read to you now out of Malachi 4:6. How do we turn the hearts of our children towards us? Men, isn't that what we really want? I hurt terribly when I can tell my wife's heart has been turned away from me, from my own stupidity and my own self, or when my kids, or when one of you are turned away from me. It's always God's heart. In John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That preposition with means that God has always had a face-to-face encounter with his Son and with his Holy Spirit. That is how relationships are meant to be. Face to face. How do we turn the hearts of our children? How do you turn the hearts of another person? How do you turn the hearts of your spouse so your spouse wants to be face to face with you and wants to be able to be in relationship? Father power is staggering when a father commits his life to Jesus Christ and commits to enter into the entirety of his life to Jesus' purposes and plans. I want to give you two examples. First one's the positive one. This is a case study of Jonathan Edwards and the impact he had on his 4 generations, or his 4G span. Listen to this. His fatherhood left a legacy of over 300 clergymen and missionaries and theology professors, 120 college professors, 110 lawyers, 39 judges, 60 author of books, 14 university presidents, 3 United States congressmen, and a vice president of the United States. This is the legacy that one man left, and gives us a perspective of father power through 4-generational rule. On the other hand, the destruction that can come through the 4G span of a man is no less breathtaking. For example, consider the prodigy of one man who lived in New York City. His name is Max Jukes. This is from his name where we get the term juke, which means it was coined to mean fake or deceive. Don't juke anybody. Among his descendants, 1,200 were researched. And here's his negative legacy that he left, 4G span. Out of 1,200, 310 were vagrants. 440 lived a life wrecked by drunkenness and unseemliness. 130 were sent to prison for an average of 13 years. 7 were murderers, 100 were alcoholics, 60 habitual thieves, 190 were prostitutes. But now listen, this is mind-boggling. The collective cost to the state of New York in the 17 and 1800s was $1.2 million in a 4G span. That's in the 17 and 1800s. It would be what now? Probably 20, 30, 40 million dollars. Here's the chilling impact of the 4G concept. The most important contribution, men, whether you're a father or not, that you and I can make in the world is to inject a godly character and integrity and ethics to the next generations. And I want today, men, for you to consider this on this special Father's Day of 2012. What kind of legacy will you leave? In a moment, you're going to hear from Ben, who's 26, and Whitney, who's 23. My parenting isn't over. How many of us thought when we had little kids, can't wait till they're 18, they leave home? I'll be done. Oh, no. No, 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 no. I mean, one of the reasons I invited them to go along was just to be in the presence with them and to have memories. Not those kind of memories, but I guess we have. And to continue the injection of father power down the line. Well, here's 3 tools I want to leave with you today. Look at the first one. Create a safe place that they can express their feelings. Create a safe place. Listen to what Paul says in Colossians 3:21. Fathers, do not aggravate your children, or they will become discouraged. Now remember that in Paul's day, the father had all power. He could put his child and wife to death without any consequences. So just remember the context. It's not the same as today, but the principle is still the same. He says, fathers, though you have all power, don't aggravate your children. Why? Because they will become discouraged. The more you aggravate them, the more they want to give up. Does anybody want to argue with them? We have more children that are dropping out today more than ever. Through suicide, through drugs, through early sexual encounters. And I want to argue one of the reasons might be there isn't this significant positive male that is injecting the character of God into their being. Most of us were not taught how to teach and how to relate to our children in a way that they could grow up owning their feelings and learning how to deal with them. Feelings are not easy to deal with. Have you noticed that? They're really not. Most of what parents we do is we actually teach our children to deny their ability to have ownership of their own feelings. Listen, if I don't own my feelings, I will not own my life. So that means if I have a little run-in with Pete, I'm going to blame Pete for whatever negative emotions I have. Instead of going, I had this interaction with Pete, and I've experienced these feelings, I take responsibility for them, how I'm going to deal with them. It might seem minute, but do you see the major difference? Huh? I can either sit here and blame him, or I step over here and go, boy, what was that all about? Why do I walk away from him feeling angry? Why do I walk away from him feeling irritated or annoyed or agitated? It's a big difference. And that isn't going to happen for a child unless we learn how to do it. So how do we do it? Let me give you an example. Mrs. M is with her little boy, and they're in the store, and the little boy screams out at the top of his lungs, I want a candy bar now. It's only 11:30 in the morning. So Mrs. M looks at her and says, Teddy, you don't want a candy bar now. It'll just spoil your lunch. You can have some for dessert. Now you might sit there and go, well, what was wrong with that? She said to him, he's saying, I want the candy bar now. And she's going, no, you don't really want the candy bar. You know, Teddy's inside going, yeah, I really do. And just in that little, what might seem insignificant, she's communicating to him, what you feel doesn't matter. 9-year-old Timmy hits his little brother. His father orders, that's enough, young man. Now you say you're sorry. Do you think he was really sorry? No. He's sitting here like, I like to take him out in the shed and beat him silly. In many ways, we repeatedly refuse children and allow them to own their feelings. We tell them that their emotions are wrong, that they're inappropriate, and even that they're non-existent. Then we compound the error by dictating which feeling is actually appropriate for each occasion. Mrs. N tells Teddy, no, you're not really feeling like you want the candy. Yeah, he really does. Timmy's father orders him to feel remorse to replace anger. Emotions can't be demanded. If I sat here and say, okay, all of you right now, I want you to experience unbounded, unbridled joy. Okay, do it. Now, Ellie, feel it. Now. Karen, you don't look like you're experiencing unbridled joy. You can't just turn an emotion or a feeling on, correct? It just doesn't work. What it does is it aggravates our children. And it not only causes them to become discouraged and depressed, they can become confused and angry. Okay, Scott, what do you mean by this? Look at letter A. Would you write in your notes, demonstrate that you understand what your child is feeling, or what your spouse is feeling, or what your boyfriend or girlfriend or another man or another woman, whatever context you're in. Demonstrate that you understand. When you dictate how a child or somebody else should feel, you're really asking them to give up ownership. And listen, loved ones, we don't want that. Would you agree? You don't want me. When I feel like I'm being tempted with lust, if I'm being tempted to eat something I shouldn't, drink something I shouldn't, say something I shouldn't, lie, I need to own that feeling so that I can take appropriate action. If you don't own it, then you're in denial and you won't take the appropriate action. You might just write this down. A child has no power to manufacture feelings. They have no power to manufacture. They feel it big time now. And they can only repress it or pretend. That's the options I give Benny, Whit, or any one of you. If I don't help you to own what you're feeling, then I'm going to force you to repress it or to pretend it doesn't exist. Now, please understand me. In not aggravating our children, we are to promote what they feel. We're not to promote them to act. In other words, I agree with Mrs. M. Child shouldn't have been having the candy bar. And I agree that Timmy should not be allowed to hit his brother. She could have avoided this pitfall by saying something like this, and I put it on the screen so you could see it. Tommy, I know that candy would taste good right now, but you're going to have to wait till after lunch and have it for dessert. Or in my case, if it was with Benny Witt, I would say, you can't have the banana now. You can't have the fruit now. Whatever it is that they're wanting, which is going to raise the glycemic sugar level, which functions like drugs, you can't have that now. But I'm saying to them, I know you'd like it. Matter of fact, I wouldn't mind one myself. But we're not going to imbibe right now. This says to Tommy, you have the right to your feelings, even if they differ from mine. And then we'd say this, but you'll have to wait till after lunch and have it for dessert. Now here's the key. This can be done without yelling, screaming, calling names, putting the child down, or denying the child's feelings. This way of dealing with Tommy's feelings allows him to feel what he's feeling, and through proper action, you're teaching him discipline to wait until it is appropriate to have some form of sugar. Let me just say this. When I say sugar, I'm talking, in my mind's eye, it would be positive sugar. But did you know whether it's sugar from fruit or it's sugar from a candy, it still raises your glycemic level? Everybody know what I'm talking about? It does. So did you know you were really not supposed to eat fruit alone? If you eat fruit just by itself, you'll still get a glycemic rush. And that's this whole idea of balance. So what's important is that as parents, we teach our children proper nutrition and the discipline of self-control. We do that by affirming what they're feeling. In our culture, we must do everything we can as fathers and mothers to protect our children from becoming discouraged or by causing them to disown or repress them. And please hear me, parents. This is not easy. Most of us in this room, I almost said probably every one of us, don't think this way. This isn't natural. Would you agree? Yeah. It's just not natural. It's not natural for me. I want my kids to feel the way I feel and think the way I think. Because I think right, I think I feel right. But to force them to that doesn't work. Would you welcome Benny? He wants to talk on this issue for a moment.
I'll speak loud. Well, first off,
keep the mic up. Just keep it up.
First off, I just want to say that my dad rocks. And he's not only my father, but he's my role model, my confidant, and my friend. I'm always so excited to celebrate Father's Day because Whit and I both feel that we have the best dad that there is.
Thank you.
And this first point is pretty easy for me to talk about, to create a safe place to express my feelings, because ever since I was 3 years old, I think I told my dad everything. He told me it was good to talk about how I feel. He just never warned me not to talk about everything. So pretty much everything I felt, if it was good, if it was bad, if it was really bad, I would just tell him. And that actually has carried pretty much till today. I pretty much still tell my dad a lot of things. Regardless of what I tell him, he's the most compassionate and understanding person that I know. What he has to say isn't always the easiest, so I don't always go to him to feel great about myself. But he says it in a way that helps me grow and become more like God. Because I feel safe with him, I've been able to go through some very difficult times and some very difficult emotions and have him there by my side helping me walk through them with me. The one situation that comes to mind is about 2 years ago, I was in a relationship that wasn't pleasing to God, and I spoke to him about it. It was a long-distance relationship. We had spent a week together, and I was about to go spend another weekend with her. And I was outside on my lawn talking to him about it.
12 o'clock at night.
It was, midnight.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, and I was excited about it, and he wasn't so excited about it. And he wasn't judgmental. He didn't make me feel bad. He just said, hey, looking forward, if you go out there, this is what's going to happen, and you probably don't want that to happen. So I listened to him shortly after we broke up, and it was probably the best thing that could happen to me. I was so thankful for his willingness to listen and to let me express my feelings without feeling condemned or bad about myself. If it wasn't for my dad and his ability to love me and create a safe place for me to be honest and vulnerable, I truly can say I wouldn't be where I am today. And this ability to create a safe place helps me work on things and not feel condemned, but to really look at my life and take the steps to be more like Jesus.
Now, just so you know, I did not ask him to share. Kathy did. I found out a little late, but that's okay. And let me tell you, that 12 o'clock, we both sat out on our grass and we wept because I laid into him. I said, I see the future. I had to inject a 4G span into him because I knew if you continue down this road, it's not going to go well. I remember looking at him and saying, I'm not your friend. I'm your dad. And I'm taking that role. Letter B, respect for your child's differences proves that you care. Now, I'm sure if you talk to Betty and Whit, they might not always say I've done the best job on this, but this can be very difficult for many of us. How uncomfortable do you get when somebody thinks differently than you do? Then think how you feel if your spouse or your child disagrees with you. Spiritually, emotionally, and relational safety is threatened when you decide what your child should enjoy. You tread on dangerous ground when you communicate to your children or to anyone else that matters that they must feel like you, think like you, and act like you. And I came out of a family that's the way it was. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to break. I remember when the four of us visited the Grand Canyon. Kathy and I were absolutely just stunned by what we saw. Benny was pretty excited too. Whitney, unbelievable. She sticks her head over and goes, "What's so cool about the big hole in the ground?" And stomps off. And you gotta be kidding me. Did you know God created that? Well, it's just a big hole. I mean, let's get out of here and go do something fun. So this is what we're doing for the next 2 days. Not me. But it's in those little moments you can crush a spirit, or you can go, okay, you have the right to think that this isn't that cool. Now, I don't doubt you. I have pretty strong opinions. I thought she should have liked it. And you should be enjoying it like the rest of us. And that does not help them own their feelings. Did you like it yesterday? Did you like the environment or just the rappelling? Just the rappelling, okay. Yeah, she said, Dad, if we could have not gone out into the woods like that and just rappelled, I would have rather that. But it was still pretty cool, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. Proverbs 51 says this, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make the tempers flare. Look at point 2. Develop the ability to understand your child's point of view. Ephesians 6:4 says this, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. Bruce is all out of sorts, and he says, go to your room till you can be pleasant. This dad allows his own son to own his irritation, but he plainly doesn't want him to be around him under such conditions. He makes it clear to his boy that he invites rejection if he shows grouchy feelings. Have you ever noticed that strong negative emotions will create inner stress? Yet unthinkingly, we often do not provide constructive help when our children or our friends or our spouses need it most. We often say that we want our children's confidences, but too often our responses cause them to turn away from us. When we don't accept our children's feelings, we're actually rejecting them. When you share a feeling, and this at times is very hard for me, it's been more difficult, I think, between Whitney and I, because she thinks much more differently than Benny and I do. Benny and I are similar. Whitney and I are really different. When you share a feeling, you don't want it disapproved of or censored, right? Right? You just want the feeling to be expressed. You want it to be heard with understanding. When you are understood, you feel safe to talk. So look at letter A. Communicate empathy to your child, which gives them the feeling that they're being understood from their point of view. Communicate empathy to your child, which gives them the feeling that they're being understood from their point of view. Empathy simply means this, that as a father or as a mother or as a friend, you enter into your child's world and you prove that you understand their feelings by reflecting back their message to them. When I'm empathic with my child or my wife or anyone, I'm demonstrating that I'm not wanting to agree or not to agree or disagree, but I want to understand without judgment. And again, if you came from my family, we're very judgmental and we were very critical. Anybody else in the house or just me? Yeah, we all are. It's just so easy to condemn. It's so easy to criticize. It's so easy to censor. And this is huge. Our children get angry when we don't demonstrate that we understand what they're feeling. Again, in my home, I never could express my frustration, my irritation, or my anger with my daddy. He'd just say, get that look off your face or I'll knock it off. So I'm feeling divided inside. I'm feeling angry and I'm walking around going, because I don't want to get hurt. Now again, I love my daddy. My daddy was not a bad man. He fathered me much better than his father fathered him. So he did inject godliness down through the 4 G's. But you can pass good things down and bad things at the same time. Would you agree? The goal is to try to pass as little bad as possible. Look at letter B. Would you write in there, empathy gets love across and helps you set aside judgment. Empathy helps get love across and set aside judgment. Dads, when you communicate that you enter into your child's world and you do so because you love them, it fosters a sense of closeness and it wipes out the loneliness. In other words, when you walk in their shoes, you get a true sense of their feelings and their behavior begins to make sense. Look at Proverbs 16:24, and would you read this out loud with me? Let's begin. Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. Joel and Whitney are going to sing a song.
brick when you hit the wall. Yeah, you've had a pocket full of regrets, pull you down faster than a sunset. Hey, it happens to us all. When the cold hard rain just won't quit and you can't see your way out of it, you find your faith that's been lost and shaken. You take back what's been taken. Get on your knees and dig down deep. You can do what you think is unstoppable. Keep on believing, don't give in. It'll come and make you whole again. It always has, it always does. Love is unstoppable. Love, it can weather any storm, bring you back to being born again. Oh, it's the helping hand when you need it the most. The lighthouse shining on the coast that never goes dim. When your heart is full of doubt as you think that there's no way out, you find your faith that's been lost and shaken. You take back what's been taken. Get on your knees and dig down deep. You can do what you think is impossible. Keep on believing, don't give in. It'll come and make you whole again. It always will, it always does. Love is unstoppable. The river keeps on rolling, like the north wind blowing. Don't it feel good knowing? Yeah, you find your faith that's been lost and shaken. You take back what's been taken. Get on your knees and dig down deep. You can do what you think is impossible. Keep on believing, don't give in. It'll come and make you whole again. It always will, it always does. Love is unstoppable. Love is unstoppable.
Don't you love that? Love is unstoppable. And here's the last point of the day. Number 3. Communicate that you trust their ability to grow. See the 3 tools, guys, but all of us? Create a safe place to express feelings. Develop the ability to understand your child's point of view. And here's the 3rd tool. Communicate you trust their ability to grow. And let me just say this. In this idea of a safe place to express your feelings, that's never the right to sit there and to curse and to yell and to be demeaning. Okay? That I would stop immediately. You will not talk to me in that tone. But I do want to hear what you're feeling. Tell me. Is it something, what am I doing? What am I saying? What am I not doing that creates the anger, creates the irritation, creates the annoyance, but you won't abuse me? I feel like I need to say that to several here. Does that make sense? Okay, so I want to hear what you're feeling, but be responsible in how you're sharing it with me. Look at this last one. Communicate their trust. You trust their ability to grow. I love this. This is one of my life verses. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says this. Trust in the Lord. Why don't you read it with me? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. As we're instructing them, you're doing everything you know to teach them biblical principle, and you're modeling for them. Trust in their faith means that you have faith in your son and daughter's life even when it looks like they're moving backwards. And this is the most difficult thing for most of us. Wouldn't you agree? If I see Benny and Whit doing this, I get a little nervous, okay? Don't you? You see your kids, and if that means they're walking away from you, they're walking away from God, they're walking away from church, whatever they're walking away from. But I love that song. Love is unstoppable. And when I'm creating a safe place for them to share their feelings, I'm creating this kind of place for them where they can try my best to understand their point of view. You just have to have faith and trust that they, in their own growing, they're going to come to the right place. Would you agree with me? Oftentimes growth is 2 steps forward and then sometimes 3 steps backwards. Some of my greatest growth is in my failures. You just have to be humble enough to say I failed. I know at some point, my own dad let me go into left me into my father's hands, especially when he thought I was going down for the count. I know there was a time in my life my dad just thought, boy, he's a goner. And there's nothing he could do. Best thing he did was not get on the phone and call me. He needed to leave me alone. And when I surfaced up out of the ashes, he was there. There's 3 things every child needs to hear from their dad. Whitney, Benjamin, I love you. I'm proud of you. And here's the 3rd thing. You're good at. You're good at. You're good at making decisions under pressure. You've been really good at choosing the right friends, knowing when to say no, knowing when to say yes. I love you. I'm proud of you. You're good at. And then here's 3 roles that every dad plays in this child's life. Every role that a man will play in another person's life. 0 to 12, you function as a coach. And what is that? You direct, you protect. And from 0 to 12, there's fairly high control. This is what a coach does. As a father, I'm to watch, I'm to direct. Part of our coaching responsibility is to help our kids learn to trust God with all of their hearts and not to depend on their own understanding. Look at number 2. You move to the counselor stage from 13 to 18. What does a counselor do? Cheerleads, encourages, problem solves. If you were with us during this time when Whitney was swimming, Peter Kim was her swim coach, bless his heart. He'd let me get at the edge of the pool, and I would run up and down the pool while Whitney was swimming, screaming at the top of my lungs to tell her go. And I remember one day, the ref stopped me, and I thought, oh, he's going to kick me out of the pool. I just was prepared for it. Because, I mean, you know me, I'm pretty loud. Go, Whitney, go, go, go! Just up and down the pool. He grabs me, the ref, and he goes, you're the best cheerleading parent I've ever heard, and then pushed me away and let me go. That was amazing. I mean, if I was him, I would have kicked me out of the pool. But this cheerleading and this encouraging is so important. And then the last one, this is where we become a consultant from 18 on. This is where you listen. This is where you support. This is where you give advice. And I would suggest this is even where you challenge. I went a little long, Whitney, but go ahead. Whitney's going to close us by sharing.
All right. Well, yes, so I've been very lucky growing up with my dad. He's one of the most supportive people in my life. Since I was little, I always heard how proud he was of me, whether it was in swimming, like he said, or water polo, or when I wanted to focus more on ministry or pursue music. He always told me that he loves me and that if he could choose a daughter, he would choose me over and over. And it used to be embarrassing sometimes because my dad, everywhere we would go, he would always talk about like how good of a swimmer I was or how good at water polo, or he would tell people when I was singing, and I was always kind of embarrassed. But I always knew that he was always just doting over me and boasting over me because he was so proud. So that was always very encouraging. And well, he took my part because I was going to talk about my swim meets who would walk up and down the pool. But and at our water polo games, he would come and he would bring like fruit baskets and things like that, and he would try and get in our water polo huddle. And I was like, Dad, you're not part of the team. You can't get in the huddle with us. But all the girls would come up to me after and be like, who is that guy? And I'm like, that's my dad. And they're like, that's so awesome. Like, he's so encouraging. And what else? My dad has definitely played a role as a coach for me in the mentor sense and even as an actual coach sense. When I decided to quit sports and pursue ministry, he was there to support me and helped encourage me to make sure that I was making the right decision. And like in junior high, when what was I playing in junior high? I don't even remember, but we would get up at like 5 a.m. And go to the gym before school, and I would always be exhausted, but I always knew that he was helping me because, you know, I wanted to get better at what I was doing, and he would always help me pursue that. And I've always kind of been, or at least tried to be, a pretty independent person. But my dad's been somebody who I can turn to for help and advice, and he can be a soundboard for me when I'm unsure about certain things. And he has definitely been the biggest cheerleader throughout my life. He's been really vocal about it and not shy about it, as I'm sure we can all assume. But him and my mom have both showed me so much love and care, and they've really helped shape me for who I am today. So thank you for showing me that unconditional love and support and being someone that I know I can always come to. And yesterday it was really funny because when we were going down the last one, and he was like, he was just super sore, and he tried to go under I can't even do it without laughing. He tried to go under a log, and his bag got caught. So he was like caught on the floor for a second. He was just in pain and exhausted, and we were all going down, and we were super scared. And he was like, I'm so proud of you guys. You're doing awesome. So just even in the midst of hard times for him, he's still really encouraging. So thank you, Dad.
We're way late. You'll have to forgive me, but I'm going to tell you one more story. I remember they were at a swim meet, and it was like the state finals, and I got so excited. And again, Pete didn't pull me back at all. So here we were in this huge pool at Pasadena City College, and he was in there coaching them, and I was down on my knees in the huddle with him. And I got down so low that I had water. I was all wet. And this girl who had been swimming goes, who is this man in the huddle? And that's when Whitney goes, that's my dad. She goes, he's the only voice I heard in the water. And I want to leave you with this. When people are in darkness, and when people are feeling like they're drowning, are they going to hear your voice? Are they going to hear your voice calling out? Are they going to hear your voice guiding and directing? Men, he wants us to be that light.